Well, before we start our regular meeting, the City Council just met on one closed session item and we have nothing to report out at this time. So good evening and thank you everyone for viewing the February 3rd regular meeting of the Arcata City Council. The City Council meeting is being held as a teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We want to encourage everyone to keep up the efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19 in Arcata. We know that by wearing masks and practicing social distancing, we can reduce this spike and keep our businesses open. Please support our businesses by masking up in Arcata. If you wish to make public comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or for an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. If you are logged onto the Zoom meeting webinar, click on Raise Your Hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it is time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to comment. You can access this meeting also by phone. Call the number at the bottom of the screen. Enter the meeting ID also at the bottom of the screen. Press *9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item on which you wish to speak, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted. You will have 2 minutes to comment. Okay, and now please feel free to join for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pereira.
Here.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
All present.
Great, thank you. Next, we have ceremonial matters, a certificate of appreciation for Julie Neander for her 28 years of service to the City of Arcata. Whereas the City of Arcata hired Julie Neander in 1993 as a resource specialist, promoted her to environmental programs manager in 2009, and further promoted her to Deputy Director of Community Services in 2015. During that time, Julie worked diligently to implement programs related to fish and wildlife habitat restoration, zero waste, greenhouse gas reduction, and AMWS environmental education, ensuring that Arcata stayed in the forefront of environmental leadership. And whereas Julie's numerous achievements include the sprawling McDaniel Slough Enhancement Project, the Humboldt Bay Trail, and continued improvement of all of Arcata's facilities, and many parks and natural resource areas, including City Hall, Arcata Marsh Interpretive Center, Redwood Lodge, as well as the city's 29 neighborhood, community, and linear parks and special use areas. And whereas Julie has a reputation of quality public service, bringing an enduring kindness, attentive patience, and dedicated work ethic. Julie's professional excellence is complemented by a gracious thoughtfulness she brings to her personal working relationships, demonstrating her appreciation for those she supports and is supported by with cards and small gifts, even hiring massage therapists to provide chair massages for the administrative staff. And whereas Julie protected, restored, and defended Arcata's natural areas and fostered numerous relationships with funding agencies and community groups over the years, demonstrating an ability to respect and appreciate multiple, often conflicting viewpoints with her insight into an array of environmental, social, and economic perspectives gained through her years of service, all while striving to balance the needs and values of various stakeholders in the pursuit of fairness and the greater public interest. And whereas Julie provided invaluable staffing assistance and support to the Energy Committee by preparing agendas, recording minutes, providing critical research and analysis to inform the committee on important energy conservation and code issues, while always providing professional support and responsive correspondence with the committee. Her dedication to making Arcata an energy efficient city is exemplary and greatly appreciated. And whereas the city and the community have greatly benefited from Julie's commitment and service to the city as an exceptional professional community services and environmental leader. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby expresses its appreciation to Julie Neander for serving the people of Arcata for 28 years. We wish her all the best and commemorate her retirement on December 30th, 2020. Signed today by myself. And is Julie here to say a few words?
I am here. Wow, I'm a little overwhelmed. I just want to say thank you so much. I feel like for me, it was such a great privilege to be able to work for the city. I feel like it's, you know, there's just an amazing team of people who work at the city. And we also have an amazing team of community members and nonprofit organizations and state and federal agencies and the individuals at those agencies who really have worked with us, you know, over the years as a team, and also the county and other regional agencies such as the Water District. And I just feel so lucky and so privileged to be able to have been doing that and do so many different things at the city with so many wonderful people. It's been such a gift to me. So thank you so much. I feel like I'm really the one that benefited the most, but I really appreciate everything. Arcata is amazing, and I know you will continue to be amazing, and I am enjoying myself immensely, and I'm still enjoying Arcata. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Julie. I want to see if there's any other comments, or public. Can we do public comment for this? Is there anyone here that'd like to speak on this item?
We have no public comment, Mayor.
Okay. Oh, I actually muted myself. Perfect. Well, Julie, thank you so much, and please enjoy this next chapter. Really excited.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, next we have on our agenda early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom, or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do have public comment. And as a reminder to those with their hands on, this will be for items that are not on tonight's agenda. We will have the opportunity later. So it looks like we have 2 at this point, Mayor, and the first one has the screen name Karen Davidson. Are you able to begin, Karen?
Yes. Hello. My name is Karen Davidson. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I live at the corner of Foster and Q, which is in the county for now. We are struggling to understand how our farm and our neighbors were approved for annexation without the knowledge of the people who live on this bonus annexation. One thing that seems clear to us is the city council didn't approve it in public, and the residents did not give written approval as the developers did. But Danco's Christart knew, and David Loya knew, and now we have to protest something that was done without the city council's knowledge. So tonight you can follow precedent and consider a 30-acre annexation with the public city council meeting it deserves, and public comment before public vote. Or you can break precedent and abdicate your authority for now and perhaps for the future to allow a city planner and a developer to accept a plan you had no idea was in the works over the protests of the landowners who found out 5 days ago. From our viewpoint, the resident landowners owners of both parcels objected at different times and recently together to Foster Road becoming an easy freeway access in every meeting for over a decade. Then a public meeting last winter was disrupted before we could speak. And then the vote was in a meeting with only a 24-hour notice, a meeting we were unaware of. Now the land is annexed and we didn't know. Things happen. Maybe we didn't see the yellow and blue changes when they were printed in black and white. Maybe we expected the city council to be consulted. Whatever the reason and pathway to this point, we request the city put a temporary hold on annexation and put the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you, Karen,
You're
for
welcome.
your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, who do we have next for public comment?
Next, we have screen name, looks like Joelle and Charlena. Are you able to go ahead and talk?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I'm here with one other person that would like to speak too. Would they go separately? Like, would have to raise my hand again?
Yes, we can give you 2 minutes and then the other person can have 2 minutes. We don't have anyone else in line behind you at this point. So if
Okay.
that works.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, my name's Joelle. I live here in Arcata. I'm a senior at HSU. Thanks for giving me this moment to talk. I recently, I relocated from SoCal with my brother to attend HSU. As you all know, finding housing has always been a challenge for us students. Personally, I've had far too many experiences where we've had to live in substandard housing with high rent. Landlords seem to have predatory leasing practices, allowing them to take advantage of the less experienced students who are generally unaware of their tenant rights. They usually come from dorms or living with their families. My most recent experience has resulted in my home getting red tagged due to electric and gas hazards. My partner and I had no functional heating, and after spending night after night in the freezing cold and the recent storms, I finally called PG&E myself to come and inspect, and they told me the heater needed to be replaced and that we had a gas leak, so they turned the gas off. Unfortunately, the monitors in the house weren't working either, so we did not even know we had a leak and might not have ever known if I didn't do that myself. The situation led to a crazy mold problem too, and has forced me and my partner to find housing. At this time, we're not completely certain about our plans, but we're trying to work through all the challenges. I recently returned to school after taking off a semester due to COVID. And even though I wasn't attending classes, I wanted to stay in Arcata with my brother and the rest of my community who've become my family. And it wasn't an easy choice, but I just felt that it was safer out here than down in SoCal with my mom. Essentially, myself and others would like to see regulations put in place to protect the community from these types of situations. The students are an obvious important part of this community and economy and should be recognized for their contributions. All tenants should be valued and protected. I also wanted to just thank Mr. Bishop from the building department, councilperson Emily Goldberg, and all of the other staff who have listened to us and done their best to help us out. We really appreciate it. It has not been easy at all. That's all I have.
Okay, and then you have a second speaker there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
My name is Charlena Valencia, and I'm a student at HSU as well, and I'm also a enrolled tribal member of the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria. And I've lived in Arcata for about 2 years now, and I have learned to really love Humboldt County. Since moving in the summer of 2020, my new house has given me extensive health problems, ultimately bringing me lots of pain and discomfort, both emotionally and physically, due to the large exposures to mold. My partner and I at first were really grateful to have found a space to stay since neither of us were working and were unsure of how we would live with limited income. When we moved in the early summer, we did not need a heater, and as early as September, I began to break out with a rash, but attributed it to my extensive hand washing and use of sanitizer, and ultimately I treated it as eczema. Eventually, it began to spread throughout my entire body. The rash became unbearable, and I talked to Joelle's mom, and she had been helping, but was unsure if it was regular eczema. Not wanting to worry her, we recently have just started to share some of our housing problems, and she notified us to report the situation since our landlord showed us repeated negligence and no concern for any of our problems. After trying everything in my power to fix myself with the rash, I realized that I came to the point where I needed medical attention, and I had no idea that the mold could cause the health issues that I have and how quickly it spreads. I was cleaning and I found mold that had covered the entire under part of my mattress and also my belongings. I had also found that there was visible infected mold on my clothing, from my hats, pants, etc. The only explanation for my ongoing eczema and pain was that the mold was causing it and making it worse day by day, which I also have medical confirmation from a doctor. Today we have lost many belongings in our house and are displaced due to the heater still not being usable and unsafe. We're also not the only ones who have suffered from the negligence of the landlord. And
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
We do have another speaker, Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. So our next speaker is screen name Sean. You want to go ahead, please, Sean?
Hello, this is Sean Armstrong. I live at 1887 Q Street. And I want to speak just briefly about public process involved in the annexation of Creekside Homes. I got involved in that project in 2004 as a consultant to plan the organic farm, which we then actually became the Organic Farmers in 2007. And I was a project manager for the project from 2005 to 2009 when it was voted down 5-0. During that whole EIR process, we always identified the issue of enclosing the farmland that I now own over here on the south side of Foster, Don and Carol's house, and now Monica and Colin's house, their land, pardon me. Somehow this was not communicated effectively in the draft EIR. So I met with Director Loya personally, and we discussed his interest in annexing our property, and I said we were not interested. And I raised the issue of how the project is being proposed would create this island, and that would force annexation of us. I don't understand his notes didn't get translated into the draft EIR on this topic because it's called a cumulative impact when there's a triggering of other things that are predictable. That's what an EIR is there for. So I raised it at the Planning Commission level. I included it in my comments. And that also wasn't included in the draft EIR, which is, it makes me really doubtful about the public process the city's having. But I also raised it in front of this city council, specifically mayor and vice mayor. When we were speaking at the time, one of the things I spoke to you and to the Director of Community Development and staff was that this property would be enclosed if you proceeded with the draft EIR as it was, or the project description. And that still wasn't captured in the notes and it wasn't responded to, which is the law, but it didn't happen. And then when it got delivered to Plan West, who acts as LAFCO, when they sent it out to the county again, the county identified that Foster Avenue should be annexed into the city, but it didn't have to be. It could be improved to city conditions. Plan West responded to that, deciding to annex our land and didn't actually—
Sean, thank you for your comments. You're out. Your 10 minutes or 2 minutes is up. Thank you, Sean. If you have anything else to add, please feel free to submit it in writing or for our second early oral communications period. Do we have any other public comment?
We do. We have one more at this point, and that is screen name C. McFarland. Are you able to begin speaking? C. McFarland?
There he is, Don Nielsen.
Hello.
Yes, please begin.
Go ahead.
This is Don Nielsen.
Go ahead, Don.
I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am also a property owner on the modified annexation that Karen and Sean have referred to. Since none of the 4 property owners on this new extension were notified, I believe that I have found the reason that we weren't. And I conveyed this to Colette Mers at LAFCO later this afternoon after I discovered it. And let me just read this very quickly, and maybe this will at least answer that part of this question. This comes from a letter that I believe was sent by Sean to LAFCO, and this is LAFCO's response. That is Colette Mers. LAFCO's response was, the LAFCO annexation application was filed by the city on November 17, 2020. Immediately after receiving the application, LAFCO staff sent an agency referral requesting comments. At the end of the referral period and over the careful review of the city's application materials, we notified city staff of our decision to proceed with analyzing a modified boundary option as part of a noted public hearing. We then proceeded with mailing a 21-day public hearing notice to all landowners within 500 feet of the annexation, which included a description and a map of the modified boundary. No letters of opposition to the modified boundary were received at the public hearing. Now here is my comment that I sent in a response to Colette, to several other people. I did not send it to the council members, but I will do that later this evening, so they should be in their mailbox in the morning. I copied the above, your response to Sean's letter, which includes the next to last sentence. A careful reading.
Don, I'm sorry. Don, your 2 minutes is up. Did Carol, I know there's two of you there.
Yeah, I'll finish.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Please go.
Don is responding to Colette, and he says, a careful reading of the next to last sentence, which is, we then proceeded, map of the modified boundary, would answer the question if it included only those property owners within reference, within 500 feet of the annexation, then it would not include the owners of those properties to be annexed. So there's your answer as to why we did not get notified, why we had no knowledge of our being annexed until 5 days ago when we were notified by our neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both for your comments.
Okay, checking one more time for any public comments. Okay, that is public comment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Okay. Councilwoman Goldstein?
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say that Joelle and Shara, very impressed with two young people willing to stand up for themselves. And I think it's something that as a council, we should really consider looking into inspections for rental properties and safety standards for our renters in Arcata, because their story, I think we all know, is not unique. And that's really unfortunate. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldstein. And actually, Karen, can you give an update about when we'll be having our proposed rental inspection program brought back to the council for review?
Sure, and City Engineer Cuttree, if you have a timeline. So just for the new council's perspective, this was actually a council goal, and we are close to having a draft program available for the council to review. We were waiting for our building official to be back to present that to the council, but I would think by March, we would be presenting that to the council and we can readjust that. But I think it's, Nature, did you have anything to add?
No, I think that is correct. We were shooting for March when our building official is back. So we still shooting for March 17 would be ideal to present a draft for review, or at least for consideration for rental inspection program.
And I do have one comment for the other speakers, if you'd like, Mayor. I mean, I think that all of those speakers know, and I just want to make sure that the council and anybody else in the community who is interested in that knows that it is that to have a reconsideration of that LAFCO decision, and I appreciated Don's update on maybe why those properties didn't get noticed, because we were under the impression that certainly they would have gotten noticed if LAFCO was going to make a modified boundary. But that they do have that LAFCO, you would need to file a formal request for reconsideration within 30 days of that decision. And so I'm assuming somebody may be working on that, but that would need to come forward to LAFCO from somebody against that annexation and that request for reconsideration in that 30-day period. But I know that those folks are tied closely into the LAFCO staff, and we'll be working through that process with them.
Thank you, and thank you all for your comments this evening. Next, we have our consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So I'll go ahead and read through these items. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of January 20th, 2021. B, biweekly report on general warrants. C, declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. D, award a contract to Interwest Partners, Inc. in the amount of $42,000 to assist with plan check review for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Authorize a 10% contingency, $4,200, for a total potential cost of $46,200 for additional plan review if warranted, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. E, adopt ordinance number 1541, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code to adjust council member salary, Title II, Administration, Chapter 1, Council, Section 2010, Salaries of the City Council members, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. F, adopt duplication of benefits, policies, and procedures for the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act program. And lastly, G, approve a letter to request assistance for processing California Redemption Value, CRV, recycling materials during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there any council member that would like to remove an item? Okay, seeing none, is there any member of the public or staff that requests an item be removed from the consent calendar?
No public, Mayor.
Okay, may I have a motion on the consent calendar, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I second the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Great, we have a motion and a second. I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we are moving on to old business. Item A, consider introducing an ordinance regulating the operation of vacation rentals and limiting the total number allowed to 125. Given that I do have a room that I've used for Airbnb, I will be recusing myself from this agenda item, and I will be turning over the meeting to Vice Mayor Watson. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Yeah, good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Tonight before you is the short stay rental ordinance, and we're asking you to receive the staff report, consider any public comment, and then introduce ordinance number 1543, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, creating Article 3 in Chapter 2, Title 6, the Arcata Municipal Code to regulate short stay and vacation rentals, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title. And then we'll bring the item back February 17th. The council did review this draft ordinance, which was brought forward from 2018 ordinance draft. At its last meeting, there was some discussion around.
David, I think we lost you.
I don't know why it muted me. We did bring this forward at a prior council meeting, and there was discussion around some of the items around the zoning clearance and the building inspections, as well as the grace period. And so we brought the ordinance back with some yellow highlighted text for your review to address those issues. I'd like to just touch briefly on what those changes are. Starting with the zoning clearance, as discussed last time, we already do a verification of the land use when we get a business license. And so each one of these businesses is required to get a business license, and we do a verification at that time under the business license. The Community Development Department collects $20 for an initial business license application and $10 for renewals for those business licenses already in the process that we have existing. And so the zoning clearance that was proposed previously in the first draft of the ordinance that you saw added an additional zoning clearance on top of that sort of miniature zoning clearance that we do along with the business license. So what we've done is amended section 6303.A to eliminate the requirement, but still allow, if there's some unusual circumstance that the community development director sees and feels like they need to do additional research and more in-depth review, then they may require a zoning clearance. But for the most part, the zoning clearances will be handled through the business license when they first apply. And so this would change what was previously estimated to be a $220 fee for that work to the $20 that they're already paying with their business license. So no additional fee associated with that. And so the language in 6303A and attachment A is what we're asking you to change and then adopt. With regard to the building inspection, in collaboration with the city engineer, we discussed, again, making this sort of an optional. Instead of making it a requirement and having a full $250 inspection conducted on every single vacation rental that comes forward, we've changed the language in 6303C so that it's only required if the building official has information to suggest that there's a health and safety violation on that site. And so it would be at the building official's discretion based on evidence that they have to go and conduct a site visit. And so not every one would be subject to that. It would only be if there was evidence to suggest it didn't meet the building code. In part, this evolved out of a concern from a prior building official that if we're issuing a license to an entity that we wanted to make sure that we were bringing people into a space that was safe for the public, we have discussed at the staff level about making sure that our license is real clear when we issue these permits, that the language in that permit is real clear that all these vacation rental owners are required to follow all of the health and safety laws and bring their buildings up to code if necessary. And so we transfer the liability in that way, in a sense, through that permit issuance. And so that requirement has been eliminated. The council heard a lot from the public about the expense of getting these permits. Those two changes effectively drop the expense down by about $500 from what was proposed previously. The grace period was another concern. The way the ordinance was drafted originally, there's a 12-month grace period if you've operated within the last 12 months, and you can demonstrate that, then you get a permit initially. And this was important in particular for those permit holders who would be subject to the cap. We drafted some language in this ordinance, and I am going to share with you some proposed revision to that language. Unfortunately, I did not have this language available before the staff report. And so what we're suggesting you do in section 6302E, instead of what's been recommended in attachment A, that you replace it with this language. So striking the original proposed or during 2019 if operations ceased during 2020 due to the COVID pandemic, and instead tacking on this sentence at the end. If vacation rental operations had been discontinued during the prior 12-month period due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the operator may demonstrate vacation rental operating income from activity occurring during 2019 in order to qualify for the limitation exemption. So this essentially makes it so that anybody who was operational in 2019 or in the last 12-month period can come forward and demonstrate that and receive a permit. As we heard at the last meeting, some folks had shut their operations down during 2020, even if they were able to operate just to be extra safe because of COVID. So with these three changes, we think we've addressed the majority of what was deliberated at the last meeting by council. And that, hopefully we've addressed much of the public concern over the cost and availability of these permits. Lastly, I do want to point to two items. The cap we indicated in the written staff report is currently set at 125. I just wanted to, raise to the fore again. This is certainly a policy decision that the council can discuss in more depth. 125 represents about 1.5% of the current housing stock in the city of Arcata. And there may be up to about 3% currently actively engaged in some vacation rentals that we just don't know about yet. When we go through this process, we'll find out more. And so I can speak to that if you have questions. And then lastly, the environmental review. I just wanted to point out that this action qualifies for what's considered the common sense exemption, that it won't have an impact on the environment. It's just a set of regulations to address housing availability in our jurisdiction. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or the city manager or the city attorney has more to say on this item. I'll yield to them.
No, I would ask if there's any initial questions, I think, from the council at this point.
Starting with Councilmember Goldstein, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, and I think I have one question. I am very invested in this because of the conversations I've been having in the community over the past week. I really heard a lot of the concerns that were coming from property owners, and I really understand that. But I did feel like we're missing voices in this conversation, specifically from HSU students who make up a lot of our renters in Arcata. Students aren't, the full student body isn't here right now. Students aren't as engaged in community activism right now. So I really wanted to make sure those voices were heard. And I wanted to know for myself, before I made a decision, what they had to say. And so I connect with a lot of our younger community members through Instagram. So I used my Instagram this week to really get some of these answers I was looking for. So I placed it as a question. I said, how easy or hard is it to find a place to rent in Arcata? And I got 82 responses, and 81 of them said it is very hard. And so that's just renters in Arcata. Young people are having a hard time finding a place to live. So the next question I had asked was, how do you feel about Airbnb's vacation rentals? I got 37 responses, and some people just kind of felt neutral about it. But 22, and these are the responses I really wanted to read, really had feelings about feeling displaced out of rental situations because of short stay rentals in Arcata. So I'm just going to read a couple of the responses that came into me, just so that I can give voice, hopefully, to some of the people that I talked to this week. So I heard they drive up rent and displace locals. They're nice when you're visiting, but some are perfect rentals, and it sucks as a resident. I don't like them because they could just rent these to students. They're messing with our rental market. I feel they should be required to pay an extra tax for taking up housing from actual citizens. I think those places should go to people who actually live here and need housing. They take value away from homes, or they take valuable homes away from potential renters who desperately need a place to live here. So again, I just really wanted to share this perspective. And so I really think that the cap that we are talking about placing on vacation rentals that are not owner occupied. And to be really clear, we're talking about two classifications. So there's with somebody who long-term occupies the space, as well as a freestanding space that's only occupied as a vacation rental. So we're only talking about capping those spaces that aren't owner occupied or occupied long-term. I think that it's really important. I'm really hearing these voices, and they might not be the loudest because a lot of them are young, a lot of them don't necessarily feel empowered to speak up, but they are there and they are the majority. They are, renters are a big part of our community. And I mean, personally, I would have liked to see the cap be at closer to 100 instead of 125. I think it's a little bit high considering that we are going to be grandfathering in some other rental properties. And I think it's the kind of thing that we can send some council members to revisit in about a year to see how all of this is working anyway. So, I mean, again, the reason I'm super passionate about this is that I think we say again and again as a council that housing matters to us. And while limiting vacation rentals isn't going to solve our housing problem in Arcata, it is one piece of the puzzle, and I see it as something really important to address. So thanks for letting me share all of that. And thank you to everyone who reached out to me this week to actually talk, because I really, really appreciate you being so honest and vulnerable. I know that's not super easy to talk to someone you don't know about your housing situation. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who had a conversation with me this week.
Thank you. How about Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, I just want to make a few comments too, and thank you, Councilmember Goldstein. I really appreciate a lot of what you said, because I just want to be really clear that there really is two very important sides to this issue, and that I think kind of the language that we are now reaching and kind of getting rid of some of these extra inspections and these extra fees is really finding this common ground between them, because it is by putting a cap in place, it's going to, leave the situation kind of where it is. And hopefully not having an overtake of these vacation rentals like we see in so many, especially sleepy coastal towns and tourist towns. This actually has been a lot on my mind recently in the sense of tourism as well. If some of you were up on the Outpost or on Instagram and saw recently of an Instagram influencer with over 50,000 followers who called Arcata and Eureka terrible, disgusting towns. This is unfortunate, but through research, I did find out that, yeah, he chose to stay at the cheapest budget hotel in Valley West. And that oftentimes a lot of these vacation rentals do play a really important role in tourism. And I know a lot of the short stay rental people I spoke to really make it a point in their rentals to make sure that they are sharing their love of Arcata with visitors and promoting local business and, kind of having that more personal, because that is why originally Airbnb was started, to have that more personal touch of staying somewhere and being able to interact with a homeowner. Especially why I think it's so important that we're not including in the cap these, rooms in somebody's house or these extra units where it is owner or tenant occupied, right? So there is a connection between the person that is coming to stay in this place and, Arcata, basically, in our example. But I do want to say that I am a member of the rental class. I am a renter here in Arcata, and I received a lot of communication that people just think that just because they see a sign that says for rent in front of an apartment building means that there's plenty of housing in Arcata. And I want people to maybe understand, if they think that Arcata has a lot of housing, to take a day and sit down and look at the housing prices on Zillow, the available rentals through our local Craigslist or anything like that, and understand that there really is not a lot. Recently, I had a young professional friend move back to the area. She is a speech pathologist, and her partner, he works in finance. They make very good money, and struggling, to find a house, waiting in lines that were over an hour long during COVID to go to showings, and getting rejected one after the other. And so even, for students, successful young professionals, whoever it might be renting, it's difficult to find rentals in this town, especially also in the cases of, you say you see these signs for available apartments. Is that a suitable place of housing for a family? Also, to bring up the no pets thing too is another huge thing that, renters are complaining of as well. So I really think that we have, with this ordinance and kind of having this extra couple of weeks to go over it and flesh it out, to understand that, yes, a cap is important to prevent Arcata from becoming one of those towns where it is virtually a ghost town and people have been pushed out, aren't able to live there because it is mostly tourists and people visiting and vacation rentals that are empty half of the year. But also not punishing, current operators of Airbnbs, especially ones that are operating with a business license. They're paying their taxes to the city and they're contributing to the local economy by paying their taxes. So finding this compromise, where we can put a cap in place to protect future rentals, but also not punishing current Airbnb operators and still, creating and fostering a space to continue to have successful Airbnbs and to bring tourists into our town, especially because there's not necessarily there's not a lot of lodging within the actual city of Arcata. There's Hotel Arcata and they don't even have that many rooms and that's it, And so if somebody wants to actually stay in Arcata and get that Arcata experience and know what it's like and tell their friends about it and get people to come here and enjoy this beautiful place that we all love, they'll probably have the best experience in an Airbnb. And so that kind of generally sums up, I guess, my comments on this, but just seeing that, having a cap is going to prevent from over speculation and help keep our housing stable, but taking away these extra inspections and making it on an as need basis for ones that are not complying or not following the rules really does strike, I think, a balance between, how we can make this ordinance work for everyone. So thank you.
And Councilmember Atkins-Salazar.
So both Councilmember Schaefer and Goldstein have done a great job of summarizing where we've come with the compromise. And so as far as the public comment and concern, there's definitely a range. There are people that say that we should ban all vacation rentals. And then there are some that think that we should not regulate it at all. So I think finding this place in the middle is very well suited for our community. And I do think, as they both said, that the vacation rentals play an important role in inviting people into our community and having that experience. So I definitely recognize that. And that's where I choose to stay when I go to places are at Airbnbs. It's a great experience. So I do appreciate having them. I think that our approach, I'm happy with what the changes are. I'm, just re-looking at those expenses and knocking down from, well over like a $570 expense now down to close to $100 and limiting those inspections to as needed, I think really resolves a lot of the comments that I was hearing from people. One of the concerns more recently that was brought to my attention was, that 125 might not be enough. And what if there's empty housing, but we have this cap? So the fact that we can in the future go back and revisit this and raise the cap if needed, if there are houses that are sitting vacant and a vacation rental would be a good use of it, then of course we can revisit this. But I think putting a cap initially in place just to get a sense of where we are and let all of the people that are operating come to the forefront, because we know there are lots of people operating that currently are off the books. So this way we'll get a handle on who's doing it and how many are out there, and then we can see what the actual numbers are. And if things need to change in the future, then we also have that ability to make changes when necessary.
Thank you. While we're taking public comment, David, could you maybe calculate, like, let's say we lowered it to 100, what that percentage would be, that resulting percentage might be? And,
absolutely.
Thank you. And do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
We do, Vice Mayor. Currently, or to begin with, we have 3, so we'll start with those. And the first that we have is screen name Brett. Can you go ahead, Brett? You'll have 2 minutes.
All right, so this is Brett McFarland, and I missed a big portion of this first meeting just because of technical issues with Zoom and the meeting. So I missed a lot of what you all discussed, but I just heard a recap, and I just want to. At first, I'd like to say that. I was frustrated to hear that way this was being revisited during the pandemic when we're not able to be there in person. This was brought up a year ago, and there was quite a bit of community involvement in terms of Airbnb vendors present, being able to speak out, see each other, network, and speak up for their businesses and just basically have a voice. And right now in the pandemic, we're confined to this electronic platform. I don't know if you're seeing video of me. I don't know. I think this is just audio, but I've had a hard time hearing people. So first main point I would like to make is just that this platform and this time makes dialogue difficult. And I do think it's limiting. And I think you're seeing it based on the fact that you've got 3 people here for public comment. And in our previous meetings, our last meeting, there was probably closer to 20. But other than that, I would like to say, I don't support a cap at this time because the numbers of Airbnbs have gone down in the last year. So I was believe in the free market on this particular instance. And I think, I think that this dropping the $500 fee down to $100 is an improvement, but it's still more burdens on people many of whom's businesses have been impacted during the pandemic. So it seems like just more to deal with. And all right, I guess I'm up. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Vice Mayor, we have 4 waiting to speak at this time. So our next one has the screen name Colin. Can you go ahead and begin, Colin? Try it again, please. Sorry about that. No, I think we lost him.
Colin, you unmuted yourself a second ago.
And
Can-
then I think,
Can you
You're
hear
there.
me?
okay, there you go.
Sorry about that. I got kicked off for a second. Anyway, I'm commenting on this as an individual and an Arcata resident, not representing any organizations, but I just wanted to say, I want to comment particularly on the cap, which just to say that I think it's pretty clear that, Arcata has a serious problem with housing availability and affordability. And I think it's very appropriate to address that with a cap on these kinds of rentals. I don't have enough information to weigh in on, what cap in particular is appropriate, but I'm glad that the council is doing this and taking some proactive steps that they can to address the issue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Do we have our next public commenter?
Yes, next we have Patrick. Can you begin, Patrick?
Yeah, my name is Patrick Swartz, and I'm a resident here in Arcata. My wife and I live up on the hill here in town, and we're in the process of opening our house up for a vacation stay, short-term vacation stay rental. I've been listening to all the comments here, and the first thing is I want to object to the idea that there's a lack of housing here. I know the housing is not abundant, but there is a lot more housing now than there was back when this study was done in 2018, which is what this cap is referring to. And the primary thing I really object to is the cap. It seems arbitrary and it seems low. We had an experience where we do have a home here in Arcata, right by the co-op, that we rent to most students and anybody else that wants to rent, but it became vacant in the summer of 2019. And the first time in 10 years we owned that place, it was vacant for 3 months. We couldn't rent it to anybody. And so it would be my conclusion that most students don't want to rent whole houses unless they get a whole bunch of people together, and many students don't want to do that either. So, and it's easy to look at the for rent signs and say that maybe there isn't for rent. I mean, I don't know why you'd advertise for rent if there wasn't a place to rent. So there are places to rent. They're not easy to get into. That's true. They're not always the most attractive locations to live at. They're not always the most affordable. All these things are true, but we're here talking about whole houses that typically aren't going to be rented by students. And right now, if you look around, housing is available, and it's not that hard to find. The other objection that we have also is emergency contact posting. This, I think, is a safety issue. Not only do we have to post our own personal information to contact, but also it creates a safety issue relative to the house in terms of potential vandalism and theft. And so I think we need to revisit that issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
We have two more waiting to talk. Our next one is Dane. Can you go ahead, Dane? You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to thank David and Sarah for the expense changes. Discretion is a great way to handle this topic. I would like to address Emily Goldstein, address the students' concerns. Airbnbers hosts are paying a hotel occupancy tax, and that is expensive. They are being taxed substantially. What we need, I feel, is that these Airbnbs are not taking away from affordable housing. They're taking, students need student housing, not nice homes, walkable to the plaza. This is very expensive real estate, typically not something you'll find students living in. These Airbnbs are allowing for HSU student families to come visit. Their other option is the Plaza Hotel or Valley West, which from Instagram we've learned is not our best foot forward for the city of Arcata. Airbnbs are creating pride in ownership. They're fixing up older houses. And I propose no cap. Airbnb is self-regulating. If there are too many Airbnbs, they won't be profitable, and they will delist Airbnb off and go back to a long-term rental, or they will sell the house. So putting a cap on this is stopping potentially tourism, which is so important for our small community. We need to embrace this. I most importantly want to propose tonight we cap the number of out-of-area Airbnb owners. That is something that Vacasa is a large management company trying to basically prey on our beautiful tourism city. So we got to address this as they're trying to add as many units as they can where out-of-the-area owners are giving out-of-the-area managers the ability to suck money from our community. So I'd really like to focus on that. If we're talking about housing, let's rezone Samoa. We need tourism. We need high density. These are separate issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are showing up 3 more at this time. The next one is Bob. Can you please begin, Bob?
Yes, I would have really liked to say that I appreciate the time that city council members spent talking with me and fine-tuning this proposal. The one thing that I didn't mention last time that I would like to reiterate is the question about exterior signage. I don't really know what the status of that is. I don't want to have to put up a sign that says, this is where, my phone number on the front of my house. The fact is, Airbnb doesn't even allow you to send your phone number to someone else out of the area because they're afraid of being cut out of the deal. So that's kind of my primary concern. The fact that we're differentiating between owner operating, I think that's crucial. As the last speaker said, the prospect of having a bunch of people buy houses in Arcata for the sole purpose of renting them out for vacation homes, we don't want that. We want to continue doing what we're doing, which is an owner-operated Airbnb or whatever you use, the ROB or anyway, it's so that's my last thing is that question is what is the status of this exterior signage that wasn't dealt with last time, and it didn't hear anything about it yet except for the last speaker. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Jenna. Can you please begin, Jenna?
Yeah, my name is Jamar Adams. I am Jenna's husband, and I just want to touch on a couple of things that Dane Gritness had said. College rentals are not always, or Airbnbs are not always college rentals, and over speculation is self-regulating based on profits and reviews, and it is very labor intensive and it is expensive. I currently own a property that would never be in the price point of a college student. I'm in the process of developing a couple more that would never be in the price point of a college student. And so they're not competing platforms or ideas. And in regards to the taxes, there are already a great deal of taxes that are being paid for short-term rentals, transient occupancy taxes. They are substantial. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I completely oppose the cap. I don't think there's a reason to put a limit on things that require a great deal of creativity and labor, and it's a self-regulating market. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are showing one more speaker at this point. It is a call-in speaker. I don't know what it shows for use of phone speaker, but ours is call-in user 5. Are you able to begin speaking? One of our phone callers.
Hello, my name is Ellie Noah. I think I'm caller number 5.
It looks like you are, Ellie. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak during this meeting, and I really appreciate all of the comments from the council members. What Council Member Goldstein really spoke to me as a long-term renter for over 7 years in Arcata, going from a student to being a young professional in the area. I do support the cap on Airbnb rentals, and I agree that it should be closer to 100. I think that housing is exceptionally challenging to come by, but I also would argue that many of the Airbnbs are suitable for not just college students, but also young professionals and families in the area. And that with we need to focus on housing the people in our town and making sure that everyone has safe and suitable housing. I don't think that there should be kind of a staggering of some housing is more suitable for college students, of course, smaller and maybe more affordable, but we need to ensure that there is ample availability for students, young professionals, those who are retired, anyone who might be at risk of houselessness within our community. So I do think that the cap is appropriate at this time. I do think that evaluating it in a year makes sense, so that there is kind of that evaluation period, just to see if that's something that's working, that is creating more housing. But as a renter, knowing how challenging it has been to find housing, having couch surfed for a few weeks or a month here and there, it certainly is challenging to find housing. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the public comment that we are showing, Vice Mayor.
All right, thank you. Were you able to get that number for us, David?
Yeah, so there are approximately 8,500 units in total in the city right now. So 100 would represent 1.2% of those. I also have some thoughts about the phone number, if you're interested.
Go for it.
So the to answer Bob's question, the ordinance does currently require that anyone who operates a VRBO or short stay rental provide a 24/7 phone number so that someone can be reached that isn't, you know, all the issues don't go directly to the Arcata Police Department. That was put in place as a you know, as a means to try and offset some of the potential for neighborhood impacts. I know there are ways that you can generate phone numbers, and so if people are concerned about having their personal information on there, they can manage either, you know, through a, you know, Google number or having a phone that's dedicated for just that purpose. So there are some options there, but the council could consider, you know, the idea that if there's an owner-occupied unit and if they're having raging parties in their backyard, they're likely to know that it's going on. And if you wanted to make a carve out for those folks who do have owner-occupied vacation rentals, we can certainly do that in the language. I will say that it'll create another, you know, administrative tier for us to try and manage and track, but it would be possible if you're compelled by that.
Thank you. So we'll bring it back to the council. Council member Atkins-Salazar.
So just 2 quick points for the people that called in. One is that it's not just about student housing or rentals. There are individuals, families, couples, people that want to buy homes in Arcata and can't. And so part of this is also about creating the integrity of neighborhoods so that there are permanent people living there and having that neighborhood feeling rather than, you know, not. And as far as the phone numbers, what I know what several of us as council members have done is have Google numbers, and those are free. It doesn't require an extra phone. It's not as convenient as having your own phone number, but at least it gives you privacy and it gives you a little bit of separation. So I would suggest that as an alternative.
Thank you. And Councilmember Schaefer. Did we lose Councilmember Schaefer?
Like we just did, like the minute you said her name.
All right, we'll give her some more time to get back in the meeting.
Back on.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody who called in for public comment, and thanks David for taking a look at the changing the cap. Again, I think this cap is really important. I appreciate Councilmember Atkins-Salazar bringing up that this isn't just about student rentals. It's about creating equity in housing for everybody in our community. So if other council members want to revisit the cap, that's definitely something that I'm interested in. Otherwise, I'd also just be interested to move forward with what we have right now.
Great. And Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, sorry, I got very randomly logged off there. Don't really know.
No problem.
But okay, I'm back. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I guess a clarifying question about the phone number. I mean, so where is this information, I guess, because I know as somebody that has stayed at an Airbnb that you have the host's number and a direct way to contact them. That's something that, you know, is usually given to you as in case there's an emergency with, you know, anything that goes wrong with the rental. So I guess I'm just want clarification of how that would be posted and where that would be posted and, you know, the privacy ramifications of that.
And I'm not sure if you caught Councilmember Atkins-Salazar's comments, just the possibility that they could get a Google number like council members do, and it would help with some of the privacy concerns. Did you have anything to add, David?
Just that the ordinance isn't explicit about how that signage is established, just that it's viewable from the public right-of-way. And the idea is not so that you know, the stayers can get a hold of the owner, but so that neighborhood members who are potentially, you know, affected by activities at the short stay rental can get a hold of that owner or their representative.
Okay, no other questions. And then the only other comment I would want to make, just thank you to Councilmember Atkins Salazar for reiterating that point of that it's not just students that are looking for housing and thinking about appropriate housing. A family doesn't want to live necessarily in an apartment building surrounded by students, right? Thinking of who is, where that living situation is, and not to be overly anecdotal, but, as somebody, I am currently looking of upgrading from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom rental in this town. And, I'm a young professional, I am on the city council, right? And it's still, very difficult to even find, an available 2-bedroom that has a yard, right? And so a lot of times those are the ones that are being converted into these vacation rentals. And so, putting a cap on that, sitting with what we have, this 1.5%, cap of the available housing. And we're not even at that 125 yet, at least of those that are currently legally operating within our city. So we haven't even necessarily reached that cap yet. And so I think that 125 is a pretty appropriate number. 1.5% is a very, reasonable amount for capping these units. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've got, I don't know. When I think about it, because when people don't come under the cap if they're just renting a room and they're excluded from the cap, and then when I think about 125 entire houses throughout the city, they're being used for that. I don't know. I can see lowering it to 100. So I guess, yeah. I think I would be interested in lowering it to 100. I have a feeling that there's going to be plenty of space. I feel like people's concerns are a little bit overblown. I think it's a good stopgap to move this ordinance forward and just to be able to reassess. And I also appreciate Councilmember Atkins Salazar's comments about homeownership. I think right now it's next to impossible to buy a house in Arcata. Somebody who's been in the market looking for a house for several months. There's almost nothing's on the market. And the prices are out of control right now. So yeah, and to me, the kind of the beauty of this is if we get to a point where we hit the cap and we reassess and feel like everything's okay and we can tolerate more, then we can change that number. So those are all my comments. And I guess at this point, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Can I make it with the amended cap?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1543, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata creating Article 3 in Chapter 2, Title 6 of the Arcata Municipal Code to regulate short stay and vacation rentals with an amendment to put a cap at 100 for non-occupied rentals. Does that work?
Well,
okay.
Yeah, I would read number 3 like you were doing in the staff recommendation. And then you can add, because we also have some staff recommendations or some proposed changes.
Okay.
So you could read number 3 and then say with staff recommendations and a cap of 100. I think that would do it.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to read it again? Okay. So we'll say everything I just said with staff recommendations and a cap of 100, waived by reading of the text and consent to read by title only.
Great. We have a second? So you guys don't want to second the motion?
I'll second it. I couldn't find
Okay.
my mute.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we will call the vote. Councilmember Schaefer?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Atkins Salazar?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Thank you, and appreciate everyone that took time to make comment this evening. And we will return the meeting to the mayor at this point.
I'll let her know. So that she can come back. And we will queue up our next item, the strategic arts plan. So we've got both Gillen and Dilo and David in. We'll give Sophia just a minute to come back. Or maybe we should just get started. What do you think, Vice Mayor? Oh, here she comes.
Hey there. Okay. So next we are on to new business. And new business A, presentation by staff on the development of the Arcata Strategic Arts Plan, ASAP, and public engagement efforts. Can we please get a staff report from Director Loya, who I'm told will be joined by Senior Planner Dilo Freitas and Lead for America Fellow Gillen Martin.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to turn the entire staff report off to Gillen and Dilo and let them present the work. But I wanted to take a quick opportunity to just let the council know that I think they're doing a fantastic job on this work. They both dived in head first to the work and have really coordinated and collaborated with a broad range of folks that have really weighed in on this at a very core level. And so just wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge the great work that they're doing. So thank you.
Hi, just give me a moment to share my screen. All right. So hi, my name's Gillen Martin. I'm a Lead for America Fellow in the City Manager's Office. As David mentioned, with me tonight is Senior Planner Dilo Freitas, with direction from both the City Manager's Office and Community Development. We have been the two leads on this project since we both came on with the city in August of 2019. And for some quick context, the Strategic Arts Plan usually articulates a community's vision and goals for the arts, and then identifies actionable strategies to meet those goals. So in 2019, the Arcata City Council directed staff to begin drafting a strategic arts plan. This idea had been circulating the Arcata arts community for years, championed by organizations such as the Arcata Playhouse. In the words of former council member Susan Ornelas, this plan should honor and support artists. So in the fall of 2019, staff began connecting with the Arcata Playhouse as the city's local arts agency, which is a designation given to an organization that supports and develops the arts at a local level. So we began connecting not only with the Playhouse as our primary partner in this plan, but also with other stakeholders in the arts community to just gauge the needs of the creative sector that this plan could support. There's two primary avenues through which we've collected the data that's gone into this plan so far. The first is more fun. It is the hearing ear, which you see on the slide here to the left. The ear is a sculpture built by Haley Davis of the Arcata Playhouse. And the ear allows for Arcata's culture to be characterized by the voices of the Arcata community by asking passersby to put in what shouts Arcata's culture. And this has been stationed at sites like the Farmers Market, the HSU Library, the Sanctuary over the course of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. And as you can see, some of these reflections on Arcata's culture speak to assets of our arts and cultural community. Others speak to reflections on places where community members would like to see us grow as a city and alter and our culture grow. So all of the hearing ear submissions will be included as an appendix to the Strategic Arts Plan and made publicly available. The second avenue, since the fall of 2019, Dilo and I have conducted 39 stakeholder interviews. And through these interviews, we've spoken with either the directors or representatives of all of these organizations. These conversations have been an effort to speak with those most proximate to cultural sector needs from the very beginning, as well as explore broader community needs that the arts already serve and how this plan can contribute to that going forward. So the data that we've had so far had access to has allowed us to identify 6 primary outcomes of the Arcata Strategic Arts Plan.
And that's where I'm going to take over. Thank you, Gillen. Again, my name is Dilo Freitas. I work for the Community Development Department, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. So our 6 identified goals are not finalized. These are just the things that have risen to the top so far based on the work that we've done, that our partners have done, the interviews that we have undertaken. And they kind of fall into 2 categories. The first 4 are the vision that we have for the arts and for ourselves as an artistic community. The final 2 are really goals for the tools that we hope to implement to support this vision. So the first goal identified is to more equitably disperse public art throughout the city, spread it past the plaza into different neighborhoods, into the Creamery District, into Valley West, into Sunnybray, etc. Make sure that every neighborhood has its own distinct identity that's supported by art. The second is to make sure every child and really every person in Arcata has access to art and to a quality arts education, to forms of expression. The third is to continue to work to make Arcata a financially feasible place to live, obviously for everyone, as we've been talking about tonight, but particularly in this plan for artists, make sure they can afford housing, can run their art as a business if they choose to, can afford to support other businesses, and really just live, work, play Arcata as an artist. The fourth is to continue to cultivate and maintain that connection between the university and the broader Arcata community. Obviously, it's a huge source of cross-pollination, and we need to do everything that we can to continue to support that. And then again, these last 2 goals are really more about how do we make this vision a reality. The first is to make sure that when this plan is drafted, it can be used as a real tool to secure funding for the arts. And that there are, that there's data at play and other content that will allow us to really be competitive for funding. And the last goal identified is one of my personal favorites, and it has to do with continuing to refine the relationship between the city and the local arts agency that is Playhouse Arts. Jackie Dandino is our main partner there, and she is currently working on outreach for a potential advisory council to support this work and support continued plan implementation. Next slide, please. So where is the plan now? We've been doing a lot of talking about the plan. Obviously, you don't have it yet, but it will be coming before you soon and will be going out to the broader community as well. It's currently with our key group of stakeholders, the partners that have been along this journey with us every step of the way. Playhouse Arts, the Ink People, HSU's College of Arts and Humanities, as well as the Sanctuary. And they are giving it a final run through to make sure there aren't any glaring red flags, any omissions, any misrepresentations before we release the draft to the artistic community. And this just kind of shows some of the questions that we have been asking, who appears and what appears to be well represented, what is not as well represented, what's overlooked, and how do we make sure that this is going to be a real functional document that is going to make real change in the community and not just sit on a shelf, which is, of course, everybody's worst fear. Next slide. So this public engagement plan is a little bit small. I believe it was in your packet, though, so feel free to reference that instead. The 2 slides here that are outlined in red show where we are at now and where we plan to be when we bring it back before the council in the summer. So in February, we're coming here. We came to the EDC, the Economic Development Committee, last night as well for comments. We plan to bring the draft to Equity Arcata's working groups this month as well. And then we will spend the next few months really targeting various elements of the plan, various themes of the plan to make sure that the goals that we have really are correct and that they're robust and that we're building in programming that will speak to the goals and support ongoing implementation of the goals. So this is a very aggressive timeline. We are planning to try and get this done by the summer. The wheels kind of fell off the bus with COVID and we're trying to get back on track. We can return earlier than July if the council likes. We're obviously happy to stay in touch to the extent that you would like. And these meetings we plan to have will likely be recorded over Zoom and can be made accessible after the fact as well. So that is a very quick overview of the work that we've been doing, and we would be happy to answer any questions and receive direction from the council.
Great, thank you both. I'll now ask for questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions, but thank you so much for your presentation. I'm really excited by all the work that you're doing and really impressed by all your hard work. So thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No further questions, and thank you guys. I'm really happy to, see this being done in Arcata, and it's important work. So thank you guys. Great job.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions, but thank you.
Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Thank you for all your work on this, and I appreciate the concise presentation.
I just wanted to say really great to see the groups that you did more focused outreach and interviews with. That was really great to see. And then just also want to give a shout out to former council member Ornelas, who really was the visionary on our council for this. So we know that maybe she's home having a relaxing evening, but I just want to give credit where it's due, that she really was the vision behind this. And I think we're really seeing just really great outcome from that. So thanks for the work that you're all doing and with our partners as well. Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
A reminder to attendees on Zoom that if you are wishing to make a public comment on any of the agenda items, to please raise your hand by using the right-hand side of your screen. And if you've called in by phone, to press *9 to raise your hand. Is there any public comment on this item? We do have one public comment at this time, Mayor. Please go ahead, Jackie.
This is Jackie Danado from the Arcata Playhouse Arts, and just wanted to say how exciting it is to work with the City of Arcata on this plan, and the foresight, and it's just a really exciting plan that we're developing. And thank you very, very much to the city and Dilo and Gillen and David and Karen and Jen for really embracing the tenets of the ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We have another speaker. Please go ahead, Alex. Want to give it another try?
I thought it was unmuted. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just wondered if it was possible to have that presentation available, that we could share it with the community, or it could be shared with Main Street or something else. Or I'm sure it's recorded, but I was just wondering if there was other access to it except for tonight's presentation.
Thank you.
Can field an answer to that. Alex, I have a follow-up listserv that I'm sending out the recorded presentation with the timestamps of start and stop. So if you just want to email me anyone who might want to receive the presentation, I can just add them to the list.
Great. Well, let's see, are there any final comments or questions from the council? Okay, well, Gillen, Dilo, we look forward to seeing this return. I won't say ASAP because it'll be later this year, but looking forward to it. Thank you both for your work. Okay, next for new business, item B, adopt infill market study. May I have a staff report from Community Development Director Loya?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Tonight before you is the long-awaited infill market study that was commissioned in 2018 to help implement the strategic infill redevelopment program. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Tonight we're asking that you adopt the infill market study as well as a California Environmental Quality Act exemption from the CEQA guidelines based on the feasibility and planning studies. I also have tonight with us Doug Svensson, who is with Applied Economic Development, who assisted with the preparation of this report to answer any detailed questions on methods or anything else you'd like to ask him. For your, just to sort of set the stage, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on this document. We had at your special study session last Thursday a presentation on the Strategic Infill Redevelopment Program, which is a program of plans that implement Arcata's vision for 20 years of development. Connected to that is the city's housing element, which it adopted in 2019 and was certified by the state in that year. And this work was ongoing at that same time concurrently. A lot of the outreach and engagement that was being done for the housing element was also included, incorporated into this document. Also part of that program are the updates to the general plan, as we'd mentioned last week, as well as some targeted rezoning, so that we can carry the burden of our fair share of the regional housing needs. But the way that the program was conceived, it wasn't just a set of unrelated documents, unrelated plans, plans with good intentions that didn't verify those intentions against the actual feasibility of making the developments that were going to be proposed in the plans. So our purpose was to study the market, evaluate the factors that affect the feasibility of development, and make sure that we design our policy that we'll adopt into the general plan and this targeted zoning that we'll be adopting to implement our regional housing needs allocation, grounded in some firm economic feasibility analysis. I'll point to a couple of key portions of this document and answer any questions that you have about any of the other sections. But I did want to just say about this that we addressed, starting from the ground up, community concerns. And so a lot of the discussion tonight on the short stay rental, for example, are items and elements that we had evaluated through this infill planning effort as well. And so just to kind of walk you through the main sections, in chapter 2, we have a housing market analysis, which largely goes back through our demographic data that were included in the housing element, and digests that, as well as the input that we were receiving from the community. This plan also addresses economic development because, as we discussed last Thursday, the infill program looks both at housing and the economy and tries to create some growth in both those areas that reflects the preservationist ethic that Arcata has. So it also looked at the economic development, reanalyzed some of the sectors in our market for targeted impact assessment. In section 4, we go into the infill housing potential. It's great to say, we want to propose infill housing, but, how does it really pencil? And this is really the core piece of this study that really addresses what our future planning efforts will look like. I want to share with you on page 112 of your packet, you'll see the same table that I'm going to share with you. But this is table 16 from that document. And this is a good way to understand both what the study is telling us, but also how the study was put together, what the methods were. In table 16, there's a lot of data here, but I'm going to break it down into a really simplified version of what all these data are. Table 16 took a look at a specific parcel, used the elements of our existing zoning and tried to project out how feasible it would be to develop that based on some assumptions about construction methods and holding costs and what return on the investment would trigger for a developer, and then looked at to get rates of either home sales or rents what would it take to make this project pencil? And so you can see here, residential high density zoning. This is based on our current straight up zoning code. This methodology showed that for studios, the rents would have to be $1,500 a month to pencil. And that would basically satisfy the market for above moderate individuals. So we're not even getting close to targeting moderate income people or lower income people. This is above moderate income people that this development would target. And that was true with the mix of various bedroom types, with different rent levels, that the entire development could only affect the desire for moderate income people, above moderate income people, excuse me. Taking that exact same development and eliminating the density. So right now we have a density cap that you can only build up to a certain amount. So that limits the amount of return that you'll get on that investment. Simply by eliminating the density requirement, doesn't do much on the low end for rents, but on the higher end, you can see, it drops the rent return by $200. And so here we've played with one parameter in development. We played with density. It drops the rates a little bit, but you can see here that it still only touches into the moderate income category. So by doing that one thing, we've shifted the development from being affordable to above moderate individuals to being affordable by moderate income individuals. So we kept playing with parameters in that way to try and find out what combination of factors is required in order to make the project pencil. The reason we went through this exercise is so that when we propose a strategy for how to zone this area, if we can propose it in a way that is going to be profitable for the developer, then they're going to be able to build the development that will create the housing that the community needs. And so you can see on this third example, 1.2, taking away density and then eliminating some parking. We haven't dipped below the moderate income here, but we've drastically reduced the rents relative to our current zoning, for studios and up to 3-bedroom apartments. And so I just, I don't want to go through this entire table, but I want to draw your attention to it because this is sort of the key to this planning work and making sure that it's feasible. I want to point out that this is only one side of it. We do have a lot of public input that was included in here. I went over a lot of the public input that we were able to gain through the housing element process and through this process at our last meeting. And so I do want to be clear that we're not looking at this solely on the focus of, or from the lens of, what's profitable for the developer. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me on that point, but we did take that into consideration because we want to make sure that we have alignment among the different sectors. So bringing the community along and making sure that their input is included in this process is a huge component to this work, but making sure that the development that we ultimately authorize to be built in our community being feasible is also a huge component of this work. So I wanted to point this out. Table 16 is an important one to delve into. I also wanted to point to the recommendations, which are started on your packet page 124. And I'll just jump to a couple of those. In general, it evaluated, both the market summary, barriers to housing creation, and a lot of those we touched on here tonight. But I wanted to point to some of the potential solutions that came out of the study, and they reaffirm a lot of what we've been talking about in the community, adopting a form-based code, increase height limits, prevent larger building envelopes. Obviously, we wouldn't do this everywhere throughout the city, but there are some targeted zoning that we could do in certain areas where this would make sense and still maintain the character of the city overall. And so these recommendations, I think, really form the basis for what our planning work moving forward will look like. And the community engagement isn't over. It's really, even though we've been doing it for about 3.5 years now, it's really just beginning. We're starting to enter into the next phase where we've released the request for proposals for that long-range planning work that we've been talking about. That long-range planning work is going to be able to leverage this study to help direct it. And we're going through the public process on those as we speak. So again, as I mentioned earlier, Doug Svensson from AED is on the line with us. If you have questions for me or him, we'd be happy to address those. And I guess just real quick, Doug, is there anything that you'd like to add as well?
Thank you, David. I just want to say this is a very interesting study in that the city is looking at a lot of different topics under a single roof, so to speak, and looking at both the economic development and the housing implications, and also the fiscal implications for the city in terms of providing services in the infill context versus annexations and greenfield development. So I think it's very commendable that the city commissioned this extensive work for this topic, and we very much pleased to be involved with it. Look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you. I will now ask for questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you guys for all this work. One question, do you believe, are there any impacts that you guys have studied that, living in a post-COVID world, I guess, might have on some of this stuff just about high density housing, et cetera, and kind of maybe people wanting to shy away from that? Has there been any consideration of just like how there might be changes to this infill study in regards to living in, a post-COVID world eventually, hopefully?
I think that there's, going to be additional pressure on rural jurisdictions post-COVID. A lot of businesses have realized that, that they're able to operate with people remote working, and that's likely not going to go away post-COVID. There'll probably be some sector, a larger sector of the workforce that is remote working. I think to your point as to whether, having people living in, multi-tenant buildings is, less safe than living in a single family setting or some other more spread out setting. I think something could be said for that. But at the same time, we still have to be able to develop within our, our building envelope. And at least from the financial perspective, as Doug had mentioned, this study shows that it's more fiscally responsible to develop infill, even if you have to upgrade your infrastructure to support it, than it would be to greenfield develop, move out into the bottomlands and start putting, housing out in the bottomlands. So I guess what I would say is that, yes, we did update the study to identify some impacts of COVID, but they kind of point the other direction to that this is, because of COVID, this is more important than ever to be able to, do smart infill.
Excellent, thank you. No further questions.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thanks so much for the report. This is really informative, just really good information to hear. I think that my only question was about parking. You had talked about reducing parking to make up some of the space and the cost. What impact do you see that having in the downtown area with less parking? I know we're also on the other side of things talking more about bus systems and getting people away from driving, but with the current number of cars in the city. Mm-hmm. Just your thoughts.
No, that's a really good question, and it's been a community dialogue for a number of years now. There's always going to be a need, at least in the near term, for for some parking, but I think we can do better as a community in terms of our planning for shared transportation methods. This study doesn't really go into some of the details about what ideas we've had for how we can plan for that, but improving alternative transportation modes, whether it's the bus system, shared car, better provision for infrastructure, both on-site and off-site for biking and walking, those alternative modes. The mixed use in general, just bringing the uses that you would, if you lived in, a suburb, you would have to drive into the city to get those services and goods. The mixed uses addresses some of that if we can provide those services in the same buildings that we're living in. And there are a number of strategies for how to emphasize the alternative transportation elements that we're discussing. And so I don't want to paint a rosy picture about the decrease in vehicle space for vehicles. It'll push vehicles onto streets. Eventually, I mean, right now we don't have a parking problem per se. Certainly, some people feel affected by parking, and certainly during certain times of the year or certain times of the week, especially near the downtown, parking is harder to come by than others. And so that is a hard nut to crack. But I guess at the end of the day, we have to decide whether or not we'll create spaces for cars to park and sleep, or whether we'll create places for people to park and sleep. And then try and find other ways to address those and the transportation and ancillary impacts.
Thank you. I like the way you put that, cars or people. I like that a lot. Yeah, no further questions. I appreciate you elaborating.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I don't have any questions. I found it was really interesting to read the report, and I am definitely on board with the direction that the city's headed towards this. And I just think the one area that I wanted to just bring up, because I know it concerns people, is a lot of people don't want Arcata to change, to have bigger buildings in Arcata, and I totally understand that. But we have a moral and ethical responsibility to provide housing, and we also have a state mandate. And I think that's the piece that a lot of people don't realize is, we are required to have over 600 new houses by a certain time period. And with the space we have, there's only so many ways of going about it. And this is the most sustainable model. And so, yes, it will change a bit of how our town looks, but at least we have control over it. Because it's my understanding, if we fail to meet these housing needs, then, and are making it too difficult for people to develop, then they can be given carte blanche to do what they want, and we won't have any say about it. So this is a way that we can protect the growth of our town and make sure that it's sustainable.
That's absolutely spot on. Thank you for bringing that up. Related to that as well is the fact that through this process, the community will have an opportunity to really participate in, in the design and, the amenities the community wants to see in these areas. We've had some projects come through recently, some higher density projects come through the city's review process, and people in the community felt really frustrated by the fact that they couldn't participate on a deeper level. And so recognizing that the state does require us to plan for this growth, and then taking the control of that planning work and doing it at a community level helps us to respond to those state requirements, but still do it in a way that reflects our values. The other important thing to understand here is that under these different modeled scenarios that I've just described, many of those can be accomplished within our existing height limits and bulk and density limits. So it's currently allowed in our zoning. It's currently supported by our general plan. This just really brings the process together for the community to participate in the development of those designs.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Watson?
No questions, thank you.
And I don't have anything to add as well. Do we have any members of the public wanting to comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. First, we have Colin. Want to go ahead, Colin? You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is Colin Fisk, and for this item, I am representing the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. I wanted to thank city staff and the consultants for their work on this plan. I think it's really valuable, and I did send some specific questions to staff, but for the purposes of this comment, I just wanted to highlight a few things that I think are important that the study concludes. One is that the city has a substantial housing deficit compared to the number of jobs that we have here. And I think that's relevant to several of the topics that have been discussed tonight. Another one is that walkability and bikeability was one of the top things that people reported looking for in new housing. And related to that, the landlords who participated in the process reported that half of their employees walk or bike to work. And I think we often hear that people in Humboldt all drive, but that's a reminder that necessarily always the case. And the final thing, the real, getting to the recommendations of the study, we fully support reducing or eliminating density restrictions and completely eliminating minimum parking requirements. And I think a couple of things that are important to raise relative to some of the comments from the county. One thing is that recent research indicates that when it comes to city planning, parking precedes driving and not the other way around. So when we provide excess parking, it encourages more driving, even though we perceive that we're providing parking because people drive. And the other thing regarding COVID that I think is important is that recent research is indicating that, COVID spread is actually more closely tied to sprawling development than it is to density, despite some of the early reports that we heard. And so I think there will always be a demand for that kind of housing. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Next, we have Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, I wanted to ask what.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that, Alex.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted, I believe.
That was me, sorry.
Okay, okay. I wanted to ask about the rents, and when you had a studio apartment, it was $1,500, whatever. So does that include any utilities? Is that going to be including your water and your electricity? Or is that the fee you're going to pay? And then we know the minimum on city water right now is about $77 a month, plus your utilities. And I'm wondering, are these buildings going to be considered for solar so you wouldn't have your PG&E bill? Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall I respond?
There is no more public comment.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. The specific assumptions we used there was that the tenants would pay gas and electric, but that other utilities such as trash pickup, water, so forth would be paid by the landlord. So I think that occurs in different ways in different properties, but those were the assumptions that we used for this particular exercise. Larger buildings are required to have solar, and so that could factor into the analysis, but we didn't make an assumption about those costs going away for solar for the purposes of these calculations.
Great, thank you. Any final comments from the council? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Can I add just one thing?
Please go ahead.
There are a couple of minor typos and minor corrections in content. And one place it refers to a project as having been approved that was not approved. And so with the approval, we'd be requesting authorization to make those minor typographical amendments as necessary.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the infill market study and a California Environmental Quality Act feasibility and planning studies statutory exemption pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15262, with giving staff the ability to correct the minor mistakes that are in the document.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you, David, and thank you, Doug, as well.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we are back to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council on matters not on tonight's agenda. Please raise your hand if you're on the Zoom webinar, or press *9 if you're on a phone line and you would like to make a public comment. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. When it is your time for public comment, the clerk will unmute you and invite you to speak. Do we have any public comment?
Giving a moment to check for public comment, and we do not have any public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will move on to council and staff reports. Are there any staff updates?
Yeah, I do have an update just from today. Unfortunately, we have had a situation with the city's residential green waste drop-off site at West Green Landscaping, and it is just temporarily suspended. So we'll be sending out a press release first thing in the morning, but working with West Green and working with Humboldt Sanitation and Humboldt Waste Management, today we did put a plan in place where Wes and Teresa Green will have staff that are available at the site still, right in the entry to the site, and customers that are going to utilize the city's. We have basically a no charge drop off because the cost of those drop offs are included in your monthly garbage service. And so if you want to utilize that no cost at that point of drop off service, you would still, as an Arcata customer, go to the West Green Landscaping site. You would receive, they would check the load and they would give you a voucher, and then you would have a choice of either taking that for drop off at Humsand in McKinleyville or at HWMA in the city of Eureka. So all of that will be updated in the press release, but I just wanted the council to be aware. We do hope this to be a very temporary situation, and once we have the issues cleared with the property, will be reopened shortly. And that is it for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any updates from council? Vice Mayor Watson.
Nothing this evening, thanks.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No updates this evening, thank you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
No updates, thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No updates, thank you.
And I have nothing to update as well.
Actually, I did have one thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mayor. At our last economic recovery meeting, there was some discussion and some desire for just to consider 2 future agenda items. One was, and they're escaping me now. One was to bring back the Plaza Task Force's recommendations for the council to look at, because I think things got kind of set aside when COVID hit. And the second one was to have some discussion around some of the business owners having issues with people sleeping in their doorways, and just that issue with some of the businesses around the plaza. And that one, maybe that would be a good fit for the homelessness stakeholder group, but I just wanted to mention those 2 items.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Watson. And I think with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.